Hello everyone, so today I'll explain how to project the face forward completely naturally without any appliances, no surgeries or any of that. Okay, this will be completely natural restoration of the facial structure. Some of the techniques that I'm going to discuss you already heard from me. Some of those are going to be new techniques that I haven't shared yet. Okay, so take notes. And before we start with the techniques, I firstly want to define what an optimal face in my opinion even is. Okay, and what these techniques are going to be focused on pretty much. So first and the most obvious thing that face needs is expansion, okay, then forward growth and the counterclockwise rotation. In my opinion, it's very hard to approach fixing facial structure naturally by just focusing on the forward growth aspect of it, right? Because in nature, face will never develop one-dimensionally, okay? So we need to work with our biomechanics pretty much. We need to expand the face, bring it forward and rotate the jaws, okay? And all of those need to happen simultaneously. And also on top of that, when you're reversing bad facial structure as an adult especially, you need to make sure that your posture doesn't keep your face or jaws stuck, okay? Because when you're an adult, you most likely have a lot of compensations, a lot of setbacks that you now need to overcome, okay? And that's why we need to have a very good protocol, or basically, you know, a set of techniques that you can follow daily. I will start from the most basic ones, okay? Then I will work my way up to like more advanced or new methods. But just keep in mind that novelty of the method doesn't necessarily mean that it will be effective, more effective than those basic methods, or that you can exclude all the previous techniques from the routine, okay? None of the steps in this protocol should be skipped. Each technique literally prepares the way for the next technique to work. Okay, so pay attention to every single step of the routine. We will start with mewing, very obviously. I hope by now you adapted the, correct oral posture and that you can keep the tongue on the roof of the mouth, because this is literally the most natural and the most effective way to expand the face, because tongue is meant to apply, mechanical pressure on the middle of the palate or on the palatine suture, which then triggers that process of creating new bone cells, which is basically how the palate expands. And this suture, palatine suture, contrary to what many people for some reason like to believe, but this suture doesn't fuse until a very old age, okay? So don't worry if you're older than 25. Also, I know that mewing is a hard habit to develop as an adult, not only, because of those like physiological limitations, let's say, but also because of the postural and structural compensations that person developed over time, okay? I will discuss how to reverse them a little bit later. But just for those of you who haven't adopted mewing yet, or you're struggling with consistent mewing, just want to remind you that I have the entire course on mewing, okay, with all the possible exercises, techniques, solutions for literally anything that may be stopping you from mewing efficiently, okay? That course is now basically a part of my private community, where I teach people, how to reverse bad facial structure, how to reverse their facial asymmetry, improve body posture, gain more forward growth, and all of those basically in much more details, okay? So in case you're seeking like a detailed structure plan, that's where you can find that. Anyways, back to mewing. So what I want you to understand for now is just the real importance of mewing, okay? Because other than expanding the palate, mewing also rotates the maxilla counterclockwise. This was, for example, very obvious in my case because my nose really reflects that rotation. But I assure you that I was not the only one it worked for, okay? This is simple biomechanics. If you do it consistently, if you do it for long enough, your palate will expand and rotate as well. And once you achieve that, once your palate expands, all the following techniques are gonna follow, are gonna work pretty much more efficiently, okay? And they will work in synergy with mewing. So the effect of each technique will be just, doubled, and your face will project further forward than it would if you were doing just mewing. And one of the easiest ways to allow mewing and all those other techniques to work much more efficiently is suture traction therapy. I talked a lot about that therapy, but basically what it is based on is basically hypothesis that by relaxing facial sutures, not only you trigger natural realignment of your facial bones, because you resolve, those stiff sutures, and you also allow much better and freer flow of the cerebrospinal fluid between your facial bones. But not only that, but you also allow intraoral techniques such as muing to work much better, because if your jaw is more relaxed, it will respond to mechanical pressure and it will move just quicker, right? So once we accomplished the relaxed jaw, relaxed cranial sutures, relaxed facial bones, we can now use that to move the face even further forward by doing forward thumb pulling intraorally, right? And cheek pulling techniques, which are done extraorally. So that way, by guiding the maxilla forward daily, manually, with your hands, literally, intraorally with thumb pulling and extraorally with cheek pulling, you're basically creating a new signal that your bones, maxilla in this case, starts to follow, okay? Maxilla moves forward, the body realigns, and you regain your optimal facial structure. I also just want to remind you once again that all the steps we went through this far are dependent on one another, okay? And truly nothing that I mentioned in this, nothing that I mentioned in this protocol in general should be practiced individually or skipped entirely, okay? If you're serious about, reversing your facial structure, about gaining forward growth, this needs to be practiced simultaneously. Literally, each step has its own benefits and each step contributes to this process a little bit differently, okay? So each point, each element of this is equally important. Okay, so let's now quickly recap what we went through by now, okay? So I explained, first of all, the importance of habits like muing. Then we discussed more action-oriented techniques such as suture traction therapy for relaxing the bones. And then also thumb pulling for pulling the bones forward more directly. Thumb pulling and cheek pulling, let's say, okay? So now, in this part of the video, we are entering a little bit more complex part of the journey, okay, which includes body biomechanics. And I said that it's a complex topic because it includes cervical spine, breathing mechanics, and just the entire body biomechanics. So make sure you pay attention, okay, because also not only it's a complex topic by itself, but it's also not the best researched area, okay? But still, what I truly believe in is that it's not possible to reverse the facial structure naturally and achieve optimal structure without doing all the things from this part, everything that I'm going to talk about now pretty much. For this to make any sense to you, we firstly need to understand the main thing that influences your jaws when it comes to mechanics, and that's breathing. The way you distribute air in your ribcage plays a huge role in the development and the rotation of your sternum, chest area, cervical spine, and your jaws. If the air is not distributed to each part of the ribcage evenly, it will externally rotate a certain parts and it will internally rotate other parts of your ribs, which pretty much means that if you don't expand the chest properly by directing the airflow in the upper chest, let's pretend this is torso, okay, this is gonna be head. So if you don't direct the airflow in the upper chest and the upper back as well, the neck muscles will compensate for that, okay? And the way that muscles compensate for that poor breathing mechanics is by pulling the lower jaw down, which immediately, sets the lower jaw back as well. And then that triggers entire chain of reactions influencing the maxilla, sphenoid, occiput relationship. So you pretty much, by the end of that entire process, you end up having a face that looks like this. Because overactivity of the muscles trying to keep the body stable, that pulls the hyoid extremely down in a very low position, which obviously influences tongue posture as well and makes it incredibly hard to keep the tongue on the roof of the mouth, especially the back third of the tongue. And also what happens on a deeper level is that fascia becomes tight in certain places and it locks the jaws in that setback position. So once you look like that, your tissue is basically, at that point, your tissue is holding your body in that kind of posture, okay? It keeps your jaws stuck in a setback downward position. But thankfully, there's a solution to this. And the best way to start releasing those restrictions that are holding the jaws back is by releasing connective tissue placed under the mandible and also by releasing or stretching the retromolar area. Those are basically two crucial points that I find the most important, okay? The routine could be much more complex, but those 2 points, let's say, they're the most important, okay? So once those restrictions are released, now it's necessary to support those muscles that move the jaws forward and that actually promote optimal breathing and optimal movement. If we were observe body as a puzzle, at this point we would pretty much be working on each piece of our body for the entire day, okay, for hours literally. So for that reason, I was extremely invested in finding the more general approach to this, okay. I wanted to work on certain part of the body, but then the improvement reflects on the entire body, okay. And that's how I learned about fascia. Fascia is a connective tissue. It's wrapped around your muscles, around your bones, okay, and not only it's located in absolutely every part of the body, but it's also organized in fascial chains, okay, going from head to toe. And when we want to heal biomechanics in order to, fix facial structures, we have two options. So the first option is either strengthening all the right muscles that would, promote optimal posture, promote facial structure that's optimal, which pretty much also means that we would need to, first of all, spend hours decoding what are weak and what are strong muscles of the body, okay? And then we would need to strengthen those weak muscles, inhibit the overactive ones, which is incredibly complex way to go about this, okay? On the other hand, we have fascia method or approach, which basically stands that we need to fix the entire fascial chain at once, from head to toe. Okay, and this approach also includes releasing fascia, okay, not just strengthening, but also releasing fascia at certain points of the fascial chain. So this pretty much impacts the entire fascial chain, right, of the entire body, all the way up to your jaws. Once you start doing the exercises for strengthening fascia, obviously you will not get like visible changes in your facial structure after 2 days, but you will 1000% you will feel a difference after just 2 days, okay? Because when fascia starts strengthening at the lowest level, at a fit level, okay, it takes time for the change to travel all the way up, but still it will, okay? Strong fascia is a key to restoring your body, releasing your jaws, and just restoring your body biomechanics as well. Without this, you will spin in circles. I know that you probably want to work on the face level since you're restoring your facial structure, but I strongly believe that natural restoration of your optimal facial structure, I believe that it's impossible to achieve that without addressing the entire body. And fascia does that, okay? So with that being said, strengthening fascia should be the main approach, okay? But there are still certain muscle groups that we can additionally work on, additionally strengthen to support this process even further, okay? While our fascia is strengthening at the same time. So when fascia is weak, when body biomechanics are off, muscles that were supposed to be included in facial stability, not facial stability, but like body stability in general, facial development, movement, rotation, however you want to call it, those muscles were not included or they were not engaged enough, okay? And one of those muscles are Massitors, so chewing muscles. These muscles pretty much generate force that brings the jaws forward, okay? And it's a nice addition to this routine, but I would just not recommend, strengthening them or just doing that part of the routine on its own, right? Because no matter how strong the Massitors are, they will just simply never, cause the rotation of the maxilla, for example. So it's a nice addition to the routine, but not something that I recommend to be practiced individually. Another group of muscles that's directly involved in cervical spine stability, but indirectly involved in facial structure are suboccipitals. Now, this indirect impact of that group muscle is very overlooked, okay, for that same exact reason, because there is just not a direct connection of suboccipital muscles to the jaw. Therefore, it's often seen as something that's not even worth working on, okay? But in my opinion, that's a huge mistake, because suboccipitals actually stabilize the neck. They stabilize the entire spine, influencing absolutely every other bone in the body, which then obviously determines how optimal body biomechanics are going to be. And this includes breathing mechanics, resting posture, movement, absolutely every daily habit pretty much that can either make or break your facial structure. So pretty much by strengthening the suboccipitals, strengthening them, extremely important part of the journey, okay? And another aspect of the stable and optimal body biomechanics when we're talking about facial structure and restoring facial structure are stable sensory inputs, which is probably weird for most of you, but what I mean by sensory inputs is that our resting habits, such as tongue on the roof of the mouth, feet to ground connection, and teeth contact, they impact whether our body will work as one unit and whether it will be fully functional. Because if the input is missing in any place of the upper palate, teeth or feet, the entire body will have to compensate for that. I also didn't manage to find a lot of studies on the impact of the tongue and feet on the body stability and movement, okay, but I did find a lot on the impact that teeth contact or occlusion has on body and on the facial structure as well. This is relatively like new field, not very well explored, okay, but the data does exist. Data exists and it's even being put in practice, okay, it's just not a mainstream practice yet. So what they used in those studies to establish stable teeth contact in order to, you know, balance the body was a mouth guard. And the mechanism behind this entire concept is pretty much that wearing a mouth guard stimulates a trigeminal nerve, and this nerve is also called a cranial nerve 5. This nerve is extremely important for this entire process because it's connected to the brainstem, Massitors, and to the cervical spine. So when body biomechanics are off, when facial structure is not optimal, it causes jaw misalignment and other compensations in body, such as forward neck posture, for example, which then obviously affects the facial structure, you know, as I previously described, like the entire chain of reactions, right? So what happens when we are wearing a splint or a mouth guard is that trigeminal nerve is being stimulated through that teeth contact, right? And then that activation or stimulation of the trigeminal nerve basically causes soft tissue to stretch out and release compensatory muscle tone in the neck and the jaw, which then normalizes neck posture, right? A mouth guard doesn't have a local effect, okay? It impacts literally the entire body through trigeminal nerve, right? The first thing you will notice after a few weeks of wearing a mouth guard is probably more prominent jawline. It's gonna be a direct consequence of the stretch out soft tissue, but still have in mind that changes are happening on a deeper level as well in your entire body, from the nervous system to physiology. I made more detailed video, you know, just talking about that, so make sure you check that out as well. But yeah, a mouth guard targets all those fascia trigger points, you know, soft tissue restrictions that I mentioned earlier, which also, you know, impacts forward movement of the jaws tremendously. So once you release that, you will see a very positive effect on the jaw, neck stability, and just neck position in general. Now, similar to this, occlusion is another element that plays a huge role in this journey as well, okay? So what I incorporated in my routine, and I got pretty big results from that in terms of just forward movement of the maxilla, is a canine push technique. A canine push basically refers to putting your teeth in contact in your comfortable bite, right? And then gently pushing the lower jaw forward without breaking the posterior teeth contact. And then you just feel the lower canines pushing on the upper canines. For most people, this will almost immediately trigger a more upright neck posture, okay? Or head tilt, pretty much, which is a part of the muscular repatterning that takes place during this process, okay? I know this was probably a lot of information to hear at once, especially if you're learning about this, you're hearing about this for the first time, but I just want to remind you once again that I do have videos on each step of this routine, okay, so you can check them out and it will probably be easier to follow this. This was like a bigger picture of everything that I already have filmed on my channel. Also, I want to remind you, just in case you want like more detailed information and structure in different courses, right? I remind you once again that I have a community where I guide people towards their optimal facial structure. So literally, personally, Annika and I, we guide you through that journey, okay? We suggest a routine for you. So if that's something you want, or if you want to go through those courses on your own, my community exists, okay? I will put it down below just in case you're interested. Also, some of you noticed that my videos about side bending, rotation, and torsion is missing. It was removed from my channel. Muing World copyright strike us again. you know everything already. It is such a boring topic at this point, so I stopped even updating you on that. But I will upload those videos on my website, okay, just for those of you who are interested in that, because I did see some comments. So yeah, just let me know if you have any questions. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days.